Hey everyone, it's Shaylin, and I'm here today with another episode of As I Write, and today I wanted to talk about my experience writing TV pilots. For a little bit of background, before I ever wrote TV pilots, I'd written quite a few short films for school. I had never written screenplays before university, so pretty new to it and all. I mostly want to talk about the most recent screenplay I wrote. I had been thinking for about a month about what I wanted to write, and I kind of had this idea where I wanted to write this web series. I wanted to write about an online friendship. I had kind of a vision for it. It was based on myself and my critique partner, and I was like, this is gonna be so cute. Oh my god, it's gonna be so adorable. And I really had it in my mind that I was gonna write this adorable, fluffy, cute web series about friendship. If you know me, you might be saying right now, bitch, why did you think you could do that? You can't write cute. Everyone in everything you've ever written dies. That's true. Look, I was trying to branch out and I failed. We started off by pitching, so we had to send in a log line and also like a summary, like 5-page summary of everything that would happen in our short film, TV pilot, or web series. And as soon as I started writing that summary, I was struggling, handed it in, and I knew it was really bad. I knew it was so bad. When my logline was workshopped, the class basically was like, yeah, this is super cute. I'm getting really nice, warm, fuzzy vibes. Is there conflict? I don't know. And then I got my feedback back from my professor, and she was concerned. And she was very right to be concerned. I was really concerned. She was basically like, yeah, so super adorable. Really adorable characters. Thank you. It's all this has going for it, is that it's cute. Then she was like, yeah, so for some concerns, there's no tension, conflict, goals, opposing motivations, stakes. And I was like, yeah, that's completely true. There's none of that. None of the things that would make something a story existed in this web series, and I totally knew that, and I was really struggling. The constraints of both the form of it being a web series, every 3 to 5 pages you need to have a full arc, and then in 40 pages you need a full season arc. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. People who write web series, all the power to you, because I couldn't do it. I was feeling really constrained by the form, but I couldn't see it working as like a sitcom pilot. Also, it seemed like it should be a web series because it was a web series about people. It was a web series about the internet, so I felt like it makes sense for it to be a web series. But I was also just really struggling with the concept and getting conflict, like getting there to be conflict, and it was really difficult, honestly. So I wrote my first 10 pages. This is how it works in this format of workshop where you write one thing in a semester. You hand in the first 10 pages, and then everyone workshops that, and then you hand in a full draft. So you kind of get some guidance while you're writing. So I'd written my first 10 pages. They were really bad. I was not happy to hand them in at all. And it was Sunday evening before my web series was due. It was due 8 a.m. on Wednesday, but class was at 9:30, so I was gonna hand it in, Tuesday evening. I was sitting in the kitchen talking to my roommate. We had friends coming over in literally 15 minutes, and I was basically just like having a crisis about my screenplay. I was like, I can't hand this in. It's literally so terrible. And I think what was so bad about it is like, if in my fiction classes we hand in 2 separate stories, right? If you hand in one story that you don't like, at least you're not stuck with it the whole semester. It's just one thing that you do. But this was like, this is all I'm gonna do the whole semester. It was so hard to write just the first 10 pages. I couldn't envision how I was possibly going to write 40 pages worth of this. And I remember saying, I wish I'd just done a short film. Like, that would have been so much easier if I'd just done a stupid short film. And she was like, maybe you should change your idea. If we hadn't pitched to the class, I would have changed a long time ago, but I kind of felt constrained to stick with what I was doing because I'd pitched it to the class. And I was like, I wouldn't have time to reconceptualize something. Like, I'm not going to be able to conceptualize something that I'm going to like in 2 days. And then I kind of just thought, unless I adapt something, I gotta shit ton of fiction and fiction ideas, and I could adapt something, and I'd always kind of thought that I shouldn't adapt. Like, it had kind of felt wrong to me to adapt. It was taking something that I'd intended to be in another form, but in that moment it was kind of all I had, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I shouldn't have like moral issues with this. Everyone in the class who's writing a TV pilot, most of them have been planning this for years. Like, there are people writing things they've been thinking of for years. It's fine for me to write something I've been thinking of for years. Just because I originally intended it to be a novel doesn't mean now I can't write it as a screenplay. Maybe I should have considered my options a little more before I started writing, but I basically just went with the first thing on my mind, which was my novel Chain Reaction. So this is a book I wrote in 2014 for NaNoWriMo. I haven't touched it since then, so, it had been, a while since I'd even touched it. I ended up changing the title for the sake of the pilot. So the pilot was called Chaos Theory, not the episode, like the series is called Chaos Theory, because I'm changing the title of the book to Chaos Theory as well. So I immediately thought of it just because I'd kind of been working on it, and it had been on my mind recently. At the time, it was January, it was late January. I'd had some breakthroughs with what I wanted to do with it in December, and big things I wanted to change that had made it easier for me to envision the future of the novel. And I'd actually just drafted a beginning like 2 days before, just a couple pages to play around with voice and what kind of style I want to write it in. It was just so on my mind, and there have always been a few books of mine that I thought would translate the best to a TV show, kind of like Breaking Bad, Ozark style crime drama. Let's go. So as soon as I had that thought of I could do adaptation, I just started working on it immediately. I opened up my Celtex and I started writing, and friends came over and I was writing like as we were hanging out. So I only had to write 10 pages, which isn't that much, but it's a lot if you don't know what you're doing. And it's not like I could just take out the old novel and copy that, because there's literally nothing structurally that I'm keeping from the old novel. And writing a pilot is very different from writing a novel, so it's not like I could just copy the structure I already had. The structure had to be completely different. But I dashed off the first 10 pages. I sent my professor an email. Bless her soul, honestly. I sent her an email where I basically was like, I really want to switch my idea because I started something new and I like it way more, and I was rambling, and I think I even said, I'm sorry I'm so chaotic. It was such a mess of an email, and I sent it to her hoping that she would grant me the gift of allowing me not to write this stupid web series, and she replied and just said, go forth and prosper. And I felt so blessed. I was like, thank you. Better for everyone, because now no one has to read this stupid web series. Dashed it off, handed it in, and that was that. I was now writing an adaptation of Chain Reaction. I had my first 10 pages workshopped, and obviously there were issues. Like, there were some issues that I knew were already there at the time I handed them in. I just didn't have time to fix them. But it wasn't awful, and it was way better than the web series was gonna be. End of the workshop, when everyone was handing me their comments, she said, I think it's really good that you switched. This seems to be working out much better for you. She knew it was a good idea I switched, because that web series was not, it didn't have a bright future, the web series. I then had to write the entire episode. And this was kind of difficult because I had terrible timing. So at the start of the semester, we sign up for workshop dates, and the class is arranged in a horseshoe like this. Sign-up sheet starts here. I'm sitting here. I'm the last one to sign up for dates. So because of that, I got a pretty short turnaround. I was in the last group handing in my first 10 pages, but I was like not the last group, or even I was kind of more in the middle in the second round. So I had a month to do the whole thing. Most people had around a month and a half to 2 months for their entire draft. I only had a month. What made that even more difficult was that everyone else had an entire plot summary because they'd done that at the beginning. I had a month now to rewrite my first 10 pages, write the rest of the pilot, and actually plot out how everything was gonna go. And to make matters worse for my time crunch, I had my second fiction piece, my second story of the semester, due the same week as the pilot. For around a month, for that month, like every day I would wake up and the first thought in my mind would be how many days I had left. It was a time crunch. Like, getting the story ready was a ton of work. Plotting and writing an entire TV pilot was a lot of work. It was a grind, bro, but we did it. Cheers. Let me tell you, I slept the weekend after I handed those both in. It was like the best day of my life. Screenplay was due the Wednesday, the story was due the Thursday, Friday I didn't have class. It was beautiful. So then it was kind of funny actually, because we had kind of a scheduling issue where we had a guest speaker the week that my script was supposed to be workshopped. One person my week was gonna get switched to the last day of class, where originally we were just doing presentations, we were just pitching. I wanted the spot because I wasn't ready. We get to class and our prof was like, so you all said you would take the late spot, so we're just gonna draw a hat. We're just gonna draw from a hat to see who gets it. And then someone else, who's not even one of the 3 people, puts up their hand and goes, the person who's going on the last day are they still handing in next week to keep it fair? And then my prof was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, I guess that is the fairest way to do it. And then after that, no one wanted it, and I was like, I'll still do it, because honestly, I have revisions I'm gonna have to do for my fiction class, and I really don't want them to overlap with these screenplay revisions. And then the other two people that week were like, oh, if you have overlapping revisions, please take the spot. Overlapping revisions is hell on earth. You do not want to be revising a story and a pilot at the same time. I took the last spot, which was great because it meant that I had 3 weeks between handing in until my workshop. And if you've ever been in a workshop, you will know that the week between handing in and workshop is the week to regret everything you've ever done in your life. It's the time to sit there in your room and think, wow, every single word I used was bad. That line of dialogue, terrible. That scene, terrible. The entire concept, terrible. Every choice I've made, terrible. Then you start thinking about things you said in 4th grade and you're like, fuck this. And everything I've ever done is cringy. You know, that's the week between handing in and workshop. Well, I had it for 3 weeks. Gave me so much time to regret all my choices. And the worst part was, I think that, like, it was a great workshop. I loved that workshop. Everyone was really great. Everyone was giving me really cryptic reviews. No one was giving me just like a standard, hey, I really liked your script, that would ease my nerves. Instead, people were being so cryptic with me. One guy in the class, he was like, I read your screenplay. I'm really interested to workshop this one. And I was like, what does that mean? He was like, yeah, it was interesting. People kept saying that. That was the word they would use, interesting. Everybody knows interesting often means bad. Guys, what does this mean? Give me something. So I had no idea how to read the room. Eventually, the day comes. I think it was a really entertaining workshop, actually. Like, I've never had so much fun listening to one of my pieces get workshopped. I enjoy being workshopped. I find it really interesting. But the group, it was just, like, kind of funny. Like, some of the feedback was phrased in a way that I quite enjoyed. I should give you the lowdown of what it's about. Basically, it follows the main character. Her name is Gemma Marquez. She is a forensic science undergrad. The book is set in Vancouver. She is very, she's a piece of work. She's a very independent, ambitious, intelligent young woman who she really goes after what she wants. And I'm explaining how it is in the pilot, not necessarily the book. The book's a little different. I'll talk about the differences just in a minute. She's been running experiments in her kitchen, and she keeps these experiments afloat through a series of cons that she's been running because she's a con artist also. At the beginning of the first episode, she finally succeeds in creating this new compound that she's been trying to create, but it promptly explodes, leaving a giant hole in the wall of her apartment, earning her an eviction, leaving her without anywhere to work or live, and things are kind of a disaster. Now, she is a very calm, cool, collected young woman who really doesn't let things faze her, but she's also obsessed with her work. So the first episode just kind of centers around her goal of finding a way to pursue her research, and then the series takes on from there. So she kind of has these 2 options she's juggling simultaneously. One is setting up this long con with this guy named Vincent. Her other option, she's trying to weasel her way into a university lab placement. And then the series will kind of take off from there, where basically she kind of, I don't mind spoiling the first episode because it's never going to be made into a show. She is successful eventually in getting the lab placement, and also sets up this long con. So she kind of, she's juggling these 2 things simultaneously, and they kind of interweave. So she's involved kind of with this very academic side of her life, where she's lying to everyone. Like, she lied to her, the professor who's sponsoring her research about its nature, and only her, research partner she's working with knows what's up. Then she's also dealing with this con. So the con and the research kind of intermingle, and they're like running concurrently throughout the entire book/series. The first episode is basically setting those 2 things up. So looking at the entire novel, I kept 1 scene. A single scene that was in the novel is in the pilot. And that single scene was just 2 characters meeting, and I didn't even keep a single line of dialogue. And obviously these characters had to meet. It was Logan and Gemma. Logan, who becomes her research partner, basically, them meeting, and obviously they have to meet. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. You see what the difference in what's beneficial on screen versus in a novel. I think one of the clearest examples of this is that in the pilot, Gemma and her best friend Piper are roommates. They're not roommates at the start, but they become roommates when Gemma gets evicted. They're not in the novel originally, nor will they be when I rewrite it, because in the novel, it's much more beneficial to have them separately, because if they live together, I always have to deal with the fact that Piper is there. Anytime Gemma's at home, and I don't want to deal with Piper being there, I have to justify why Piper's not there. When I want them to be together, I will have them together. In a TV show, you know, you're gonna have your primary locations that are kind of the home bases of the show, and the home bases, I would say, where we would see a lot of the show take place would be the university lab, Vincent's apartment, and Gemma and Piper's apartment. Those are kind of gonna be 3 places that we're at very frequently. It is not beneficial at all to have Gemma and Piper live separately, because having them live together forces them to interact, and unlike in a novel where I'll have them interact when I want them to interact, in a show, that's what we want. We want them to always be interacting, because a character on their own, on screen, is not that interesting. So it's way better, and it's gonna give so many more opportunities to explore that friendship, which is kind of a very key part of the series' heart. They're fun. Like, feedback on them was quite interesting. I think someone said, Sourpuss and Ray of Sunshine is a timeless combination. And that's really what they are. Like, Piper is like an artsy ray of sunshine, and Gemma's a cynical evil genius. It shouldn't work at all, but they are really hilarious together. They're very much an odd couple, where they have just such different worldviews and personalities, but together they work out somehow. So that's like an example of something that I changed to make it work better. Another thing that I changed was just having the eviction in the first place. Gemma's character is slightly different in the show. In the show, I would say she's a bit more, her personality leaves a little more room for mistake. She's a bit more chaotic. Like, she's still very careful and calculated, but she has to be a little more chaotic because this is gonna go multiple seasons. She has to be making mistakes continually, and she's a pretty difficult character to get to make mistakes, honestly, because she's so smart, and she thinks everything she does through in a very, very calculated, methodical way. So I kind of introduced the eviction as a way of really setting her character off balance, throwing her out of her element from the start, whereas in the novel, she's gonna start without she hasn't been doing her research at all. She's just been planning it. But that doesn't create a very visual beginning, you know, seeing someone doing calculations. It's much better to see her in her lab and have it literally blow up in her face. I would say her character is pretty much the same, but there's just that little show. Gemma has it's just a little more prone to mistakes, I would say, because novel Gemma obviously still has to make a lot of mistakes, but not as many, because we're going to be dealing with a lot less plot in one novel versus like would be 5 seasons of a show. That's some differences that I noticed. The workshop was, like I was saying a while ago, very entertaining because Gemma is a real piece of work, and I had kind of an advantage in that this is a character that I've been working with since I was 17, maybe even younger. 16. This is a character I've been working with since I was 16. 5 years. You know, I have a really long history with Gemma, and I understand her very deeply and very profoundly. She's one of my favorite characters I've ever created. You know, a lot of people were coming into their scripts with new characters that they had to just create. I had 5 years of history with Gemma, so I think it showed quite strongly in the pilot and made her a really strong lead, and her personality really shined through. So like in the first 10 pages, obviously, you know, you're just getting a glimpse into the world, and a lot of people were like, I'm really here for Gemma. Like, I'm so here for it. One person said that I thought was really great, that was a comment I really remember, was she was like, at first I was kind of off put by how abrasive she was, but then I realized that I love House, and she's just a female House, and now I'm totally here for it. Like, there were definitely some people who were like, I stan, and there were some other people who were like, I'm kind of concerned about my ability to empathize with this character if she's gonna be so cold and mean to people and treat people so terribly. Like, I know one friend in my class, she was kind of like, oh no, that's the best way to go. Like, if everyone in your show is a garbage person, then I don't have to have any moral investment. I can just pick my favorite trash human and like stan. And she was like, I love it. I love it when characters are all awful. And I was like, thank you, you get me. I also love when characters are all awful. I think one of the comments was, she's the female lead we've never been allowed to have before. But there were also people who were like, I'm a little concerned. Like, I'm not gonna make the judgment yet and say I can't empathize with her, but what if I can't in the future? Because so far we haven't seen any softness to her. And my prof had the same feedback. She was like, this is a really well, like, conceptualized character who's really interesting. We've never seen a protagonist like her before. We have never seen this character before. But that doesn't mean that she's necessarily sympathetic and will we be able to sympathize with her. So my prof went from like concerned to being like very protective of her in the full workshop. We were discussing, I wasn't, I was sitting there quietly taking notes and laughing because the discussion was quite funny actually. But people were talking about this one scene and if she was too much in the scene, like should she be toned down in this scene and overall. And my prof just said, listen, she goes, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if she was a man, because men on TV can be dicks to everyone and we're used to it. So can we please just let her be a dick to everyone? And I was like, bless up. Honestly, thank you. It's like Gemma Marquez did invent feminism. This was one of my favorite pieces of commentary I got on her that I had to write it down, and it was, she has more traits that should make me dislike her rather than like her, but she owns her jackassery so flawlessly that it comes full circle and I admire her for it. It was just like really interesting to get commentary on a character that I've been writing for such a long time but have never really gotten feedback on. I think this was one of my best comments on her from my professor, which was, she's this super interesting combination of science and sex that we've never seen before. And it's great. I don't want her to be toned down. Obviously, I got a lot of feedback. Like, the issues were primarily structural. I'm a fucking moron, honestly. And I didn't structure it using 4-act pilot structure because I'm stupid. I just wrote it. And there were so many, like, what my prof said, which was really true, was it has all the right scenes, they're in the wrong order. One thing that really clicked with me was one of my really good friends in the class, he made this comment, and it was one of those, sometimes you get a comment where you're just like, you know, the planets align. He made this comment where he was like, there's no midpoint. And his suggestion, and it was brilliant, like it all fit together, was that there's something that happens near the end of the screenplay that needs to be the midpoint, and then she has to exhaust every possible resource and option in order to solve her goal. And it was just like a perfect realignment of how everything should be, and I was like, yes, it's perfect. But I was overall like, it was definitely a really good workshop and I was really excited. I was worried going to this workshop, honestly. Like, I had stakes because normally you go in, you have something you've been working on for a couple months. Obviously you don't want people to hate it because that would suck, but you're open to like a lot of change. Gemma as a character I've been writing for 5 years. If I showed up and the feedback was this character doesn't work and she needs to be changed drastically, honestly I would have been pretty crushed. Doesn't mean I would have ignored the feedback, but it would hurt because it's been such a long time I've been planning her. Obviously the structure needed work. Having people really like the character was a huge relief. And I also have a bunch of ideas on how to structure things. My prof sent me like 6 pages of feedback, like on the structure, which is so much, but so helpful when I go to write that novel. She started it off by saying this really, really sweet comment that I was really like touched by. She said, wow, I love this script. You're really pulling off something special with Gemma, and I'm dead serious that you need to keep writing this. There's something about her character and the world you've built that screams television to me. Yikes, I'm gonna write it as a book. I'm so impressed with how you handle Gemma's attitude and personality. You don't oversell her, you just let her exist, and she seems so honest because of it. I want more. I thought that was really sweet, and it really made me excited to write the novel. The last class, so, you know, we were just hanging out, and I was talking to my prof, and kind of, she was just asking us about, like, where our scripts came from and stuff, and the first thing she wanted to ask me about outside of workshop was science. Like, are you a scientist? Listen, this was one of my proudest moments ever. There's a lot of fucking science in this script, okay? Pilot introduces us to the 5 main players of the show. Gemma, Piper, Logan, Vincent, and Isaac. 3 of them are scientists. I'm not a scientist. And in the workshop, people were like, wow, the science is so convincing. Someone was like, yeah, reading this, I was like, maybe I just didn't know, but maybe Shaylin is like a chemistry writing double major. People were convinced by my science. So I felt very proud of that. If any actual scientist read it, they would probably cry, but no actual scientist read it, so it was convincing to artsy people. And it was one of those things where I know that if I was actually writing the show, I would have a science consultant, like shows like Orphan Black or Breaking Bad have. For just the workshop, I did all my own research on science. So my prof was asking me, how did I do that? To come up with the concept of what Gemma's research was, I basically researched things that were kind of like upcoming research in science, and took something that fit some of my criteria and then just modified it to be a bit more extreme and fit like the criteria of the story. But I was like, I just took real research that's actually happening and modified it. Sometimes you have to throw together some science jargon to convince a room of writers that you know what you're talking about, and most specifically that your character knows what you're talking about. That's the one struggle with Gemma, is she's so much smarter than me that writing her is like, bitch, I can't do this. Like, I'm trying to channel your energy, but you're so smart and I'm It's stupid. Listen, I'm like, chemistry 12 is the one flaw in my high school transcript. You really think I can handle this right now? So yeah, I kind of thought I'd mention that because I think it's a good way to actually, if you're working with science and you're not a scientist, I do think that's like the way to go. So then the other thing she said to me was, because I was like, yeah, this did start out as, it was supposed to be a novel, and I realized that literary adaptation is hard. I feel so bad now for screenwriters who get flack for doing adaptations and them not being true to the book, because what's good in a book is not good in a screenplay, and I've really learned that now. Later on in our conversation, she was like, yeah, you know, I can always spot the fiction writers because you structure your screenplays like they're short stories, and it's true. It was structured like a short story. I, all in all, had such a good time writing this script. Like, I've never had so much fun writing a screenplay, honestly, and it made me want to screenwrite more. I'm really sad I can't fit screenwriting into my schedule next year because I wanted to write a feature, which is what you do in 4th year. So that is the story of my TV pilots. I had so much fun writing it. Oh, this is making me miss my TV pilot. Like, I literally had so much fun writing that pilot. It was such a delight, and I think because it was something that I'd envisioned so clearly, I was able to use the medium of screen a bit better than I'd ever before, because it was something I really cared about and something I could envision so clearly. I just had so much fun with it. But I'm gonna wrap this up now and say thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr. Bye!